How's everyone doing? How's everyone? Yeah, before I get into this real quick, just want to say thank you for the continued support and the comments. I do read them. It's just taking a lot of time to reply at the moment because I'm just constant full out with university at this point, start of the season and all that as well. So it's been a bit mad with work and uni. So I will get on it. Appreciate it. Keep doing them. I will read them. I will reply to them when I have time. I massively appreciate it. Let's get into the video. So yeah, the player ratings, here we have it. Start with the goalkeeper. Again, such a quiet game for the goalkeeper. In the sense that in terms of actual saves made, look, you had to be alert and constantly ready to react to things, especially later on in the game. We went down to 10 men. During the game, I thought he did everything he needed to well. When they had corners, they were dealt with. He caught a lot. He punched them in good areas if he did. I thought his distribution seemed a lot calmer. Again, Hull tried to kind of force him down the middle. It was very interesting, but he was fine with that. He waited for them to react to them find a pass. I thought it was decent. So I give Ilan a 7 out of 10 this game. I think it's a quiet game for all intents and purposes as well. So yeah, decent game from Ilan. Fullbacks. Start with Shaq. Start with Shaq on the far left. I give him a 5.5. I just don't think he impacted the game in which we kind of, well, he did the other time. All right, I think he was a bit quieter in this game. I don't think he got forward well enough. His passing at times was very slack, too soft in the pass. Defenders read it a few times. Yeah, I give him a 5.5. I wanted his best outing, for sure. But as like we said with Sam Byram, we need him to get fully fit so he can actually play 3 games a week. So it made sense why Farke did that, because we don't want long-term injuries for players that are already injury prone. Luke Ayling, I thought he got better. And one thing that, it's just, when we always rate, when people rate players and say, oh, he was rubbish, people don't, and it's normal, like, we've got to realise they're up against another player, and that other player is also a professional footballer, and that professional footballer also has goals in their career. Jaden Philogene, who was on the left, is a very good winger. I watched a lot of talk about him pre-season, and the Villa fans were loving him when he came on in his cameos. He played really well. He was very direct, and that's what he is. He's a winger that will kind of just forget about the tactics. He's a 1v1 winger, and what his aim is every game is to beat the fullback. And in fairness, I think the first 15-20 minutes he got the best of Luke Ayling maybe once, maybe twice, but I think after that, Philogene didn't really impact it that much. I thought Ayling did very well to deal with him, and he won his battles after that. When the other lad came on, I can't remember. Other guy came on, he did beat Ayling once or twice, but again, that's later on in the game with fresh legs. You're expected to be as fresh as you were at the start of the game with a guy that's literally just come on. Is ridiculous, especially when he's quick. I give it a 6.5. I thought it was better this game. He's part of that resilient defence, and he got better for me. Not amazing, but okay. The centre backs. So let me just talk real quick about Joe Rodon. I gave him an 8, and honestly, if he didn't get sent off and he'd played the last 30 minutes of that game, I promise you that would have been a 9 if he played the way he did. Joe Rodon was absolutely outstanding. Seriously, like, just everything about his game was excellent. His passing, his positional play, his recovery speed is ridiculous. His tackling's brilliant. Aerial play is decent. Just so frustrating the way in which that red card came about, because, look, I've no qualms about the second one. That was a yellow card. That was a silly decision from Rodon. You should have known better. That was silly from him. But the first one is just an absolute joke of a decision. The fact that you can give a foul for that is an absolute joke. And if you look at the consistency of this league, and the fact that we had 2 guys last week at Millwall who literally did worse than that, 10 times worse than that, 3 or 4 times each, and didn't receive a single yellow card, to this week is just ridiculous and just shows the level of officiating, how it's done in this country. I don't like it. I don't think it's good enough. It's so inconsistent, and that was massive proof of it. And that was a big part of the reason why Rodon got sent off. I mean, the second challenge is just silly, but the fact that you can go through with that yellow card is a joke. But apart from that, honestly, he's really good. And I'm genuinely so annoyed and frustrated at him that we won't have him next game, because just stand him up. We didn't even need to dive in there. We need him. I'm going to miss him next game. That's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. He's been excellent for us. Strout, impressed with Strout. Strout's like consistently doing okay and well and then good for me, if that makes sense. He grows into a lot of games and he just does the right things. He doesn't get involved as much in like battles as Rodon does. He's the guy that kind of initiates those things. But Strout's just calm. Everything seems to be doing this kind of season. He's just calm and composed and good. Just does his stuff and gives it. That's what does his stuff, gives it to the other players. I really like that about him. It looks so good in there. Interesting to see how he reacts with Cooper next to him next week. Obviously, I imagine that means he'll play back on the right side as opposed to the left. Slightly different dynamics there that we're going to have to deal with. Big thing missing Rodon, but Strout was good for me again. I really like him. He's growing into the player we know he could be, which he was that promotion season and in the year after in the Premier League. 7.5 for Strout. The midfielders, and look, let's talk about Archie real quick. I give him a 5.5, and again, that's not a terrible score. It's fine. He played fine. I think the thing about Archie was, and yes, just particularly a few times, he did give the ball away at times. He did, make the wrong decisions, and maybe that's fatigue, tiredness. Maybe that's just, coming up against different type of opponents. With Seri in there, who's a lot more technical. We know he can do the physical battles. He's done that already this year, but having a real technical player in there, maybe just slightly, fingered his brain a little bit. But look, Archie has been outstanding this season. He was fine yesterday, just not as good as his usual standards, but he's 17 years old. Like, it was not a problem for him at all. Good learning curve for sure. Ampadu again just did Ampadu things. I thought he was excellent. So much covering. When we were on the ball, his passes were decent. Picking up in them areas to progress through him. Yeah, I thought, again, with Ampadu, like, we need to be careful with these players. So a lot of people talking about Greve and Kamara and why they're not being used. People don't understand at times in games where everything is on such a knife edge, especially when you're down to 10 men. Maybe last 25 minutes, Farke was going to bring those players on. Maybe he was going to change the game. But then when you get a red card, every single plan you have gets thrown in the bin. Maybe you wanted to just stick with the known quantity that was Archer, Gray, and Ethan Ampadu, especially when we were so under the cosh. You look at the attributes of the players. Ampadu, when we did need to defend, sits just in front of that back five and wins absolutely everything in front of them. Archer Gray then collects the ball and starts attacks. We needed that. We needed that solidity in Ampadu in front of the back four when they progressed the ball, when they had us under the cosh. And we needed Archie Gray, like we scored against Millwall, to start those attacks at the edge of the box and progress it forward. So it made sense why he didn't make that move. Having said that, I think there is a question now how fit these guys can be playing 90 minutes next weekend, or this weekend against Watford, because I'm sure they were not expected to do that if the red card hadn't gone through. I'm sure they wouldn't have been. So we had to adapt, and we did, in a way, without adapting, if that made sense. We didn't stick to the game plan that I think was. And in the end, at the end of the day, it worked. We were solid. They had that one worst chance, the worst finish I've ever seen, miss. But look, you know what? At the end of the day, right, do you know what? I'm fed up. And we weren't being great at parts, especially start of the season. But the luck we've had against us in some of the goals we've conceded, about 10 deflections off players in some goals. It's ridiculous. I'm glad we had a bit of luck because we need that. I look at other teams and the goals they're scoring as well, and defenders just passing them the ball without even being pressed in other games. I'm glad we had a bit of our luck. We need a bit of it. And that was it yesterday, and we had it. Good. Because luck's a big part of football. Look, it's huge. So yeah, fairly solid for them to again. Just Archie didn't get into it as much as usual. That's it for me. Nothing too deep. These two guys, Dan James. Dan James is one of them players for me where, and I mentioned this before, Dan James is, well, we talk about his impact. Of course, he's an impact sub. That's where he's best. But Dan James is also better when he receives the ball high up and he doesn't have to be part of the build-up. Dan James, and this is what Hull did. They made the space where Dan James had to drop deeper. Now, we don't want Dan James deeper. We don't want him part of the build-up. We want him on the last man with one thing on his mind, 1v1 defender. Can he cut inside or can he just go at the byline and just try whip it in? That's where Dan James is effective in games. And they didn't allow that. They really doubled up that side when it got down there, and they made sure that he could not progress it. And they made sure he got the ball deeper, and that meant he had to be part of the build-up. He's not a creative player in a build-up. That's not his game. That's not what he is. And he really suffered for that yesterday. And his end product was off because of it. You know, always gets in dangerous areas, Dan James, and I like that about him. His final ball, and he always brought it down around him because of that's good management, and it's good team management from Hull. It's good from the manager, and that's what they did. And again, it's about rotations and keeping players fit. You know, with 3 games in a week, I can't stress how hard that is. They played 48 hours ago before this game. 2 games in 3 days. Guys, that's not easy. That's literally, that's a joke. That is ridiculous. That shouldn't be allowed. Seriously, that's ridiculous. The preparation time that the other teams had more, yeah, shouldn't be allowed, but it's what it is. 5.5. Nonto didn't fully get into the game. I thought areas he was dangerous, picked up the ball in good positions, but again, they forced him out quite well. Not quite there one-on-one. Could get tackled quite a bit. Not his best outing. Fatigue for me, you could see it, you could tell, and this was across the entire team. The energy was one of a team that had played 40 hours ago. And then that's what do you expect? Ridiculous. And that's why Farke made the changes and brought Dan James on and put Xhaka right back without changing the whole dynamic of the side. Because you make 4 or 5 changes, you change the entire dynamic. You can't do that, especially when all the players are not fully set on the system yet. That's something you do in the second half of the season. But yeah, 6 and 5.5, not really that effective. Although they did look dangerous in areas, of course. Strikers, Joel Perot wasn't effective again, and that was it for me in this game. From like we saw against Sheffield Wednesday in times, not very effective. I thought we played some good stuff, and I thought we were the better side overall before the red card for sure. And we were quite comfortable in the game. I think that's fair to say. Hull didn't create many chances, apart from that one huge chance which they have to score. But as a whole, in 90 minutes, as a team, you're looking at that thinking, look, we saw what happened with that situation. But apart from that, solid. Not much came through. But on the other end of the pitch, with these 2 guys, it's fairly ineffective from Perot again, and that was it. Finding those connections and times in a game where he needs to adapt his play. And the whole conversation of a 9 and a 10 is, honestly, right, I'll be honest, it's boring me now because people are focusing too much on the name of the position, a 9 and a 10. When Joe Perot did his interview the other day, he talked about the role of that position, and that's what you need to take into account. What's the role of the 10 in this side? What's the role of the 9? The role of the 9 in this system is completely different to a traditional 9, right? Our 9 and our 10 are very interchangeable depending on the situation or the scenario they're on in the pitch. If it's a situation where Jorginho has space in front of him, he will drop into the 10. They might both drop into the 9 position. They might both drop into the 10. Then the fullbacks will push up, which then the wingers will push inside. That's what happens at times. Very fluid. The role of the 10 is different to the typical creative role of the 10. And it was the same under Daniel Farke at Norwich. The role of the 9 for Pukki was very much a traditional 9. He stayed on the last man, for the most part, in between the defenders, playing off the lines. The role of the 10 was quite similar in terms of they played a box-to-box role more than Perot does, but they also did play with the striker at times to create a front 2. And that's what we're kind of seeing in this situation. The difference being the 9, our 9, at times is given the freedom to not only go in behind, but drop deeper and create the play. It's just about learning the cohesion and Perot understanding his role and probably Rutte understanding his role. What I liked about Rutte's play, so I give him a 7, he was very good at holding it up. And he's learning and adapting as a player, and I like that because he's got a good physical, presence to him, and he has to use that more. And we saw that yesterday, the way in which he held the ball up. Didn't come off for him all the time. Some of the passes were slack, some touches were a bit dodgy. But the way, and he obviously missed the one-on-one. He's an instinct player. But the way in which he held it up and progressed the ball a lot and moved the ball out wide, I thought he did really well in certain areas. It's just about them learning the role they have. Forget the position. It's about the role you have in that position. About what they need you to do in that position. That's what we need to get right when teams play different styles. We've got it under certain styles, clearly. When teams play slightly different styles and different positions, we have to learn it. And that's what happens when you play more games and train more. Jed Anthony, pretty small impact. And again, his impact will have been massively affected by the fact that we had 10 men, of course. Yeah, not too much to talk about there. At time to get into it. Again, the 10 men changes everything. You got a deeper role there, and I thought he did okay defensively. I thought he covered quite well on that side, fairly solid. So yeah, not a problem at all. Genuinely in terms of his defensive shape and defensive structure. And once we have 11 players on the pitch, we'll see the best of this guy. I didn't give a rating for Byron. He didn't play enough, but he good impact. 1v1. I keep saying this. 1v1 defending. He's brilliant. Genuinely, I don't think he's been beat yet in terms of got past and run past. Not someone that's ran down the line and crossed it in. That ain't getting beat. I mean, as in getting past him. Genuinely, maybe once. Maybe Burns once. A few against Cardiff, potentially. That's it. I can't give him a rating. Liam Cooper came on. Very rusty. Look, he's not played in a long time. He was good against Cardiff in the first game. He just was good. People say he weren't. He was good. Yeah, just rusty, and I think that's to be expected for someone that's not coming. And not only that, but you're coming into a very difficult situation in a game where the intensity is high. You've got 10 men. You have to adapt quickly, and I just think he was a little off it, a little eager at times to get into tackles. But he did, after his first two hit mishaps, he did deal with most things well. He did a great tackle near the end of the game, which was brilliant, by the way. That was an excellent tackle. He had very much a Liam Cooper type, some mistakes in there, but did grow into the game. And for me, look, Rodon is the man. We are massively going to miss him. But I'll die on this. Like, I guarantee he'll be much better if he plays against Watford. If he is the guy, he'll put in a much better performance. Now he's got this out of his legs. He's back into it now. He'll play much better. Cree, final one. I was very impressed with Cree Somerville. I was when he came on. And this is what I liked about Farke when he made the rotations. Bringing a player on that impacts. Obviously, he didn't expect him to come on this early. Again, the injuries and the cards changed the entire game plan, which is why I give Daniel Farke a lot of lenience to this game, because it's so difficult as a coach to deal with not only injuries coming off, but then we've got 10 men all of a sudden. How do you adapt to that? I give him a 7. I thought it changed the game. He saw Bright on the ball on the left, cutting in. Didn't really get tackled. Created shots. Created passes in the final third. Looked very bright. Did Cree Somerville. So yeah. What's interesting now for me... Sorry, I've got this. What's interesting now for me is how we kind of use the 3 games in a week and how we use our players. Because yesterday, the game showed, and I think players wouldn't have played 90 minutes if we didn't have the 10 men. I think whole midfield would have been changed at some point, for sure. Maybe with 25 minutes to go, I think. So it's difficult to understand what they'll do for the next game. On Saturday, because it's a quick turnover again at home. You want it full of energy, and maybe Cree was going to get 20 minutes in this game and then play a full game, but now he had to play most of the match with Nonto's injury. So maybe again, are you then looking at if Nonto's fit, Cree starts, or do you switch that around, play Anthony, play Cree on the right potentially? I don't know. It's interesting, but I see people giving stick to Gordon Farke about not changing the midfield back. Again, I've been through this. I can't stress how difficult it is to adapt when you go down to 10 men. To change a game when you're down to 10 men is difficult because you're not telling the player to come into a situation they're used to. You're telling them to come into a situation that you've not planned for 10 men, especially new players that are not fully understand the system at 11 aside. When it's 10 men, it's a completely different scenario. And it's a huge risk to bring those players into that situation because they will not understand it. And it's little gaps. And like I said, Ampadu fits perfectly between the back 2 defenders when we are under pressure. Deals with everything. Archgray then is that connective tissue between the midfield and the attackers when we counter. And that's why he kept them on. And that made sense to me. Yeah. But that's it. Look, tough game before the red card. I do think we were the better side. I think we created the better chances. I think we dominated the ball a bit more in terms of not necessarily in terms of possession, but in terms of being more effective with it. I think Hull passed it a lot, but they lost kind of as they went up the pitch. It got slower and slower, and they didn't really have a clear chance until that huge chance near the end of the game when we were down to 10 men. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Hull are a good side, and there's 4 teams in the last 5 games that have not lost, and we are one of them. We're building up some real momentum. And it's not about looking at teams above us. It's about looking at us and finding how we can change these draws to wins. Because the biggest thing here, and players are saying it, managers are saying it, because it's true, We're not losing games. And we don't even look like losing games, to be honest with you. The only game we've lost in the league this season, or anyway, one is penalties. The only game we've lost in the league this season is, again, down to a penalty. That's it. We've lost a game in this league because of a 90th minute penalty when we had half the squad. Half these players I've reviewed say we're not even at the club then. Like, we need to put that in context. This league is tough. And I see people talking about the Bielsa years and how beautiful it was. It was, but best believe there were so many games like this. So many games like this. Where it was horrible, scrappy games. I want scrappy in the sense that it was horrible football. We played some good stuff just in terms of how close it was and how they don't allow you to do what you want because they're frustrated and stuff like that. There was loads of games like that. And the fact that we got a draw out of this is a huge positive for me. Now, our goal now is to find out how we can be effective more consistently in games and take our chances. Defensively, we look good. The midfield looks good. The front four, when it clicks, look unplayable. Let's just try and find some consistency in there, and we'll be absolutely fine. So much of an overreaction every time we don't win a game 5-0. Guys, we're not a Premier League side playing in the Championship. We're a Championship team now. We have Premier League players, or players that could play in that league for me. That doesn't mean we're levels above these guys. When it all clicks, and on our day, we are. When you start the game, it's 11v11 in the Championship against well-coached teams that are established in this league. Hull have lost one game this season. They beat Leicester. We're away, having played 48 hours before. That's not easy. They had 2 whole rest days more than us. 2 whole rest days. That's huge. 2 more days of preparation. That's huge. Very happy with that, given the circumstances. Very happy given the circumstances, indeed. This team knows how to not lose. And 3 clean sheets in a row. How long was it since that happened? Genuinely, that must have been years. Like, years. Since we were last in the Championship, I imagine. 3 clean sheets in a row. One of them 30 minutes with 10 men. They had that huge chance, but good. We had a bit of luck. That was all they had. That was it. We had our one-on-one, which we should have scored. I'm happy with it. I'm not expecting every game to be beautiful for the full 90 minutes. I'm not expecting us to tear teams apart in the final third every game. Because teams set up specifically to stop you doing that. Especially a side that's had 2 more days of preparation for you than you have for them. So much into this that was against us yesterday. I was talking about it in Joe's show. They've had a lot more rest and preparation for this game. We couldn't have done a lot of training on this game. And to come out like that and adapt because of that situation with 10 men, I'll take that. And just with this as well. Burnley last year in their first 14 games drew 7 of them and lost 1. We're not losing games. The wins will come more consistently once we are an established side, once we fully understand the system and the situation, and once we get a little bit more clinical in certain games, it'll be fine. Still very early. People saying these teams are 9 games apart. That can all change in 1 week in the Championship. Where was Southampton, a week and a half ago? Look at them now. Come on. Sunderland a few weeks ago were at bottom of the league. Near the bottom. Let's relax. In 2 weeks, this entire table could look completely different. We need to chill out. It was fine. It was absolutely fine. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. I appreciate the support. Like I said in the comments. Please smash one of them if you don't mind. And if you don't mind subbing as well, that'd be alright. Please. I appreciate the support from you lot. I'm busy at the moment, so I apologise for the kind of lack of videos. I do want to do more in terms of match breakdowns, but it's just been busy. So yeah, shout out to you guys. I appreciate everyone here.